Flying cars, robots doing all our chores, vacationing on Mars. Sound familiar? For decades, these were the visions of the future that filled our imaginations. But here we are in 2024, and well, things look a bit different than we expected. No flying cars flying overhead in our skylines, no robot butlers greeting us at the door, and you'd be hard-pressed to find a reasonably priced Mars resort package on Expedia. So what happened? Why did so many of these predicted future technologies get delayed? Was the hype just way overblown, or are we looking at this all wrong? Let's take a journey through some of the most notorious examples of outdated future predictions and explore both why they haven't materialized yet, and more importantly, why that might actually be for the best. First up, the robots are coming for our jobs. Ever since the concept of artificial intelligence really entered the public consciousness, there's been a looming fear that advanced AI systems would make human workers obsolete across all industries. The dream of robots freeing us from menial labor is tantalizing. Who wouldn't want more free time for family, friends, and personal growth? But the reality is, AI and automation aren't just coming for routine tasks, they're coming for all jobs eventually. According to a 2016 article by the McKinsey Global Institute, 45% of work activities back then could have been automated using existing technology. And the OECD researchers in 2021 estimated that 14% of all jobs are at a high risk of being automated in the coming decades. This was all before big announcements we've been seeing in AI, robotics, and automation over the last 3 years. Rather than perpetual unemployment, a more likely scenario is a redefinition of work itself. It is difficult to think of a major industry that AI will not transform. This includes healthcare, education, transportation, retail, communications, and agriculture. There are surprisingly clear paths for AI to make a big difference in all of these industries, says Andrew Ng. With robotic process automation handling the routine, for a while we'll need to upskill to remain relevant. But potentially freed from so much menial labor, the 40-hour workweek drudgery could be a relic. We'd have more unstructured time for parenting, civic engagement, recreation, art, and self-actualization. Imagine AI as the ultimate liberating force for human potential. But making this transition equitably without windfalls of wealth only for an elite few means rethinking economic policies around taxation, education, and universal income programs. Next up, those recurring visions of Mars colonies, Mars tourism, and even full-scale Mars terraforming to make the planet Earth-like. On the surface, it's an appealing sci-fi fantasy. You get an amazing exploratory spirit, the possibility of untapping vast mineral resources, maybe even one day transforming Mars into a backup planet in case things go awry here on Earth. The problem? The obstacles are astronomical. Just the sheer fuel requirements and travel time to get willing colonists to Mars is daunting enough before you even start to consider the challenges of somehow making that cold, airless rock hospitable. So while a small-scale, taxpayer-funded Mars research base may one day happen, the notion of Mars tourism for the masses, let alone a full planetary reengineering, is likely to remain pure science fiction for many, many decades to come. But here's the key point of this video. Is that such a bad thing? With all the very real challenges we face right here at home on Earth, like climate change, poverty, conflict, perhaps we shouldn't get too distracted by visions of escaping to another planet just yet. Our focus is better applied to stewarding and sustaining the one life-sustaining oasis we already have. Instead of sinking trillions into far-flung impractical goals, that money and human effort is better invested in developing green technologies, protecting natural habitat, and making Earth as wonderful a place to live as possible. Besides, if we can't properly care for the planet that evolved over billions of years to support life, what makes us think we can just recreate that on another hostile rock? For now, taking care of our existing home has to be the priority. But what about underwater cities on Earth? The idea of human settlements fully submerged beneath the waves has been a popular concept since at least the 1960s. There's definitely some initial appeal to the notion. The oceans make up to 70% of our planet's surface, so undersea colonies could ease population pressures on dry land. And usually they're envisioned being powered by renewable offshore energy like tidal and wave generators. That all sounds great in theory, but then you start wading into the realities like the immense construction costs and the challenges of assembling entire cities that can safely withstand crushing deep sea pressures, the difficulties of maintaining appropriate air supplies, cycling out contaminants, the disruption to marine ecosystems, The ongoing corrosion damage, the lack of natural sunlight, putting it all together and creating large-scale underwater human habitats is a Herculean, extravagantly expensive, potentially ecologically risky endeavor. While we do currently have small-scale undersea research facilities and temporary living habitats, the future of widespread undersea colonies appears to be an ocean away. But do you know what? That's not necessarily a bad thing. As we just discussed, maybe focusing so much time and resources on enterprising ways to leave the surface of the Earth is missing the point. Rather than struggling against an oceanic environment, we'd be better off pursuing smart land use, material reuse and recycling, sustainable architecture, and rewilding programs that create vibrant, harmonious, land-based communities in balance with nature. I don't know about you, but I always love seeing the flying cars in the Jetsons cartoon. This notion of personalized air travel being the standard form of transportation has been around since at least the 1940s, maybe earlier. The dream conjures up visions of utter convenience, where your own personal vertical takeoff and landing vehicle could simply lift off from your driveway, soar over clogged traffic on the highways, and whisk you away to your destination at high speed. No wonder it captured our imagination for so long. Just visualize how much time you'd save on your daily commute by cruising in a straight line, no stoplights or gridlock to deal with. Unfortunately, the reality of making that vision work at a mass scale hits some pretty severe turbulence. A sky filled with millions of uncoordinated personal flying vehicles weaving around each other at different speeds and altitudes is a potential recipe for disaster. Not to mention the immense fuels and energy resources required to keep that many airborne vehicles aloft, which could be a climate change disaster. So while sleek flying sports cars makes for great CGI footage and movies, ubiquitous flying transportation is not likely to happen anytime soon. The good news? We may not need it to. As we continue developing electric vehicles in smart cities designed around connectivity and walkability, and double down on remote work, the need for long daily commutes could diminish. People can spend less time in transit and more time living, and without the pressure to get small airborne vehicles off the ground, we could focus on greater innovation in efficient public transit and lower carbon emitting multi-passenger air mobility solutions. Instead of a chaotic sky with every person piling into their own airborne jalopy, we may see fewer vehicles overall, transporting more people better organized through network travel platforms. It's a far more sustainable, accessible, and equitable vision of the future of transportation. So there you have it, a dose of perspective on why so many far out imagined future scenarios haven't taken flight quite yet. But if we step back, maybe we can appreciate that some of those fanciful sci-fi dreams were misguided from the start. Pragmatic, nuanced visions for the future may not make for flashy sci-fi movies, but they represent realistic goals that promise a richer quality of life for more people. The most wondrous possibilities for our shared tomorrow are likely to be found somewhere between the sci-fi spectacle and the world's pragmatic needs. If you enjoyed this video, please check out this other video that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy.